Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Nicholas Richardson and this is the news. There has been no breakthrough in the OSCE talks in Vienna. Polish Foreign Minister and Chair of the OSCE, Zbigniew Rau, said on Thursday, during the third round of diplomatic meetings this week, aimed at diffusing tensions over Russia's demand that Ukraine never be allowed to join NATO. Poland holds the chairmanship of the Organisation for Security and Cooperation in Europe this year, and Rau said that for progress to be made, the organisation's members would need to enter into a real dialogue.
It's our intention to launch a dialogue just in order to, as I said, reinvigorate the debate about European security. There is no doubt in my mind that the OSCE is the best possible platform to discuss this issue because we have 57 participating states and all of them giving their membership, their participation in the organizations are by nature committed to the common understanding of the European security. Many visions of our common security, which means many visions of our commitments. So, and I must say that I believe that all these tensions in the OSCE area result in the first place from the different understanding of European security. The question is, for example, whether we can describe a set of views concerning security that assume that the security of one country can be extended or strengthened at the expense of another country by violating the principles of the OSCE, like the equal sovereignty, territorial integrity, and so on, or even the right to decide of every country what kind of security constellation or organization or alliance it wants to belong to.
An official familiar with the discussion said envoys at the meeting had all read out prepared statements rather than engaging in genuine discussions. Addressing envoys from the 57 members of the OSCE, Rau did not name Russia, but listed a string of conflicts in which Moscow's involvement has been alleged. Russia has deployed more than 100,000 troops near its borders with Ukraine, which is already battling Moscow-backed separatists in its east. Russia annexed Ukraine's Crimea region in 2014. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabko said on Thursday that Washington's rejection of Moscow's key security demands was leading the talks towards a dead end, Russian RTVI television reported. He said he saw no reason to organise a new round of talks in the near future on security guarantees, but said dialogue was, for now, continuing on various fronts. The Russian envoy to the Organisation for Security and Cooperation in Europe said during an OSCE meeting on Thursday that Russia will act to defend its national security if it does not receive a constructive response from the West to its security demands. Thursday's talks in Vienna were the first this week in which Ukraine will be represented, and there only on a low ambassadorial level. Ministerial talks between Russia and the United States in Geneva on Tuesday and between Russia and NATO in Brussels on Wednesday failed to yield clear progress. The main problem is that the United States and its NATO allies are not prepared, under any guise, for any reason, which we have discussed and analysed over and over again, to meet our key demands to NATO. The demands are non-proliferation of NATO, the rollback of alliance infrastructure and returning to its 1997 borders, and, of course, on that issue of legally binding guarantees on the non-deployment of systems in the immediate vicinity of our borders. We can no longer retreat. We can already see that there will be other measures, other actions against our opponents, if they don't take into account our demands and our needs in the end. Earlier, the Kremlin gave a bleak assessment of Russia's security talks with the United States and NATO this week, describing them as unsuccessful and saying there was disagreement on fundamental issues. Polish scientists at the Medical University of Bialystok have identified the gene responsible for predisposition to severe COVID-19. This will lead to the creation of genetic tests that will identify patients for whom COVID-19 poses an additional risk. So far, COVID-19 appears to be unpredictable, with some patients suffering only mild symptoms, while others end up with severe complications or even death. Researchers from the University of Medical Sciences in Bialystok investigated the causes of this condition. We have been able to identify and, I say we with a purpose, a very serious risk element associated with COVID incidents. It is related to genetic structure. 1,400 patients from all over Poland were tested. The research in Bialystok took place in parallel with the work of scientists around the world. It turned out that among all the research done in the world, there was one gene associated with chromosome 3, which was more abundant in Poland than in other countries. The particular gene affects 14% of the Polish population, whereas in Europe it is 9%. Research work began just weeks after the first COVID-19 patients were diagnosed in Poland. The gene tests will go to patients in the coming months. I think we can clearly say that science is integral to the fight against the coronavirus pandemic. There's no question about that. In addition to prevention of infection, in addition to government action, that is restrictions and other actions that we are taking, it is science that is becoming an important tool in the front line of the fight against the virus.
Staje się niezwykle istotnym elementem walki w pierwszej linii z koronawirusem.
86% will not have this increased risk, but catching people more at risk at an early stage can help save their lives because they will be treated differently. The study investigated 1,500 people infected with the disease nationwide and identified a gene variant possessed by 14% of Poles, which is about 5% more than in other European countries. Meanwhile, the Sejm is working on a bill that would allow employers to check whether employees are vaccinated or have a negative test for coronavirus. The bill has been favourably reviewed by the Health Committee and is expected to be proceeded at the next session of the Sejm, which is on February the 8th and 9th. The European Commission urges Poland to pay fines imposed on Poland for failing to suspend operations at the Turów lignite mine. Last year, the European Court of Justice imposed a daily fine of €500,000 for failing to suspend operations at the mine and power station, which generates up to 10% of electricity in the country. On the other hand, the new government of the Czech Republic suggests that a compromise is near. The Czechs want the mine, which is owned by the Polish state-controlled energy company PGE and located near the Czech border, to be closed owing to fears that it has an adverse effect on groundwater in the region. EC spokesperson Balázs Ujváry said at a press conference in Brussels on Thursday that the Commission's task was to collect the fines from Poland which were imposed by the ECJ. He pointed out that a standard procedure had been launched concerning this issue by sending a request for payment. He added that if the Polish authorities failed to pay the fines, the European Commission had procedures in place to recover the money from the penalties, and this would be done by deducting the amount of payment mentioned in the first request from funds the member state receives from the European Union budget. Meanwhile, new Czech Environment Minister Anna Hubáčková said she was ready to reach a deal with Poland next week over the disputed mine. I am prepared to go to Poland, to Warsaw, with a final offer of an agreement or signed contract, or to discuss closing a deal, Hubáčková said after meeting local representatives on the Czech side of the border, neighbouring the area where the Turów mine is located. She added that a previous draft agreement from September was acceptable to the Czech government. That's the news. Thank you for watching. Stay with us for the weather, Poland Daily Business and more programmes. But from me, it's have a good night and a better tomorrow.